All right, it's time for our random thoughts. And again, one of our more popular best of segments on YouTube. So check it out if you don't have a chance to listen to this whole segment here, or if we say something that somebody might want to hear and they're not going to listen to this point of the podcast for whatever reason, have them go to the YouTube page and just click on the best of random thoughts and they will get it as well. And Marty, I'm going to start with something that has always irritated me, but it irritated me even more when I was at a game a couple of weeks ago. And I was going to bring it up last week and I forgot. And that is, some of these stadiums have situations where fans think that it's okay to stand on the walkway of the bleachers and watch the football game as if they've got VIP tickets. And it's not even, they don't kneel, they don't sit, which they shouldn't. They stand and people can't see over them. They're blocking the walkways. It's a fire hazard, I'm sure, if you look it up, if people had to evacuate. But that's beside the point. Sit your rear ends down in the bleachers. And this was at a game where there was more seats available than there were not. It's not like you would have had to go up and cuddle up next to somebody in this COVID era. And if you have that problem, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Put a mask on or don't go to the game, but don't be standing where you're blocking people staying. And here's why I brought this up. So I'm at this game and I'm on the other side and I'm sitting in a bleacher with my son and I hear an announcement I can hear it from the other side. Folks, just a reminder, please do not stand on the walkway of the bleachers because you are in people's ways. I counted, Marty, there were 3 different sets of groups of people doing this, one on each end, which you might say, well, you can't, you're not in the way. Well, you sure are if they're in the red zone on either side.
Absolutely.
There were 3 or 4 people in those 2 groups, and there was a group right smack in the middle at the 50-yard line. And I could tell it wasn't the board president. It wasn't the athletic director. It wasn't anybody important who you might say, oh, well, you know what? They should be doing that because those people have more common sense. They wouldn't do it.
No.
And so the announcement happens. You know how many people moved, Marty, out of those 12 people? 0. I'll answer it for you. Not one person moved. You know what? And you know what got me? They actually looked around. So, they heard it. It wasn't one of those things where I was looking at them thinking, they didn't even pay attention to that. When the announcement happened, they actually turned around and looked up at the press box, a couple of them. That's how rude they were. So, and then they announce it again 5 minutes later. Nothing happens. Nobody moves. So I watch the athletic director at this school go to a police officer and ask them to move those people. And the reason the athletic director did this is because he was on the field involved in the game, and so he couldn't move. And here's my solution to this. And you know how I have good solutions to these problems that these schools have.
That's right.
Is that somebody in that school who's an administrator, and they all have administrators there for these games, needs to go over to those people, write down their names, because I can tell you right now, Marty, every single person involved in this situation was a student at the school based on how they looked, why they were there. They wouldn't be there if they weren't, most likely. They were a student at those schools. Those kids should have been escorted out of that game and not allowed into the next game. And you only have to do that once, and the problem is taken care of. You're not going to make a big deal about it. You're not going to suspend them from school. You're not going to do anything like that. They're just not coming back because they're being downright rude. Or, you know what? If you want to personally go up and ask them to move, that's fine. But if they move back, or if it happens again the next week, out of the stadium for the rest of the season. There is no reason for that to happen. There's enough things and enough issues that go on sometimes at these games, whether it's on the field, on the sidelines, in the bleachers, in the parking lots. Don't stand up in the bleachers. And when you're asked, you shouldn't have to be asked to move, A. And B, when you're asked to move, get your rear end in a seat or go home.
I agree. And along those lines, real quick, I was watching a game with that Benny Mitchell was doing this weekend, and he openly had to say that we're going to turn down the field mic because of the things that were being shouted from some of the parents at not only the officials, but the players on the team.
Yep.
How did you miss that? Are you a moron? I mean, it's just, and Benny was like, sorry, we're going to turn this down.
Right. Good for Benny.
It's just, it's amazing. But the sportsmanship of some of the fans and the parents, and it's gotten out of hand. All right, I'm going to go a little later themed here for my first one, and I've got a few today since we didn't have a lot of games to talk about. First of all, I want to hit on Nick Sirianni's horticulturally themed press conference for the Eagles this week. Did you catch that?
I did.
My God. All right, where do we start here? First of all, I was watching Nate Burleson, or listening to him on a podcast this week, And he said, you're standing in a room with 65 guys, including practice squad, injured players. And these are big guys. They're meaty. They've just had a tough practice. And you're going to talk about growing a flower, that our team is like a flower with its roots taking hold. And Nate Burleson said, look, I guess I get the analogy, but why not a redwood tree? Why not an oak tree? Why not? Where does he go with this flower? And then the hosts were all cracking up, because then he goes to every player needs to make sure they water and fertilize the flower, which really, if you stop and think about it, sounds awful. Because there are different ways to do that. The whole analogy was just so bizarre. And as you watch that press conference, anybody who hasn't seen it, please go to YouTube and look this up. It was Nick Sirianni. All you got to do is put in Nick Sirianni flower, and that'll bring this up. But it was so bizarre, and it almost reminded me of someone who starts talking, realizes, what the heck am I talking about? What did I get into? But then realizes, you know what? I'm on TV. I'm in front of a room full of people. I got to just buy into this now. I got to tear right into it. It was incredible to hear. And you're left scratching your head. And the coach of the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, I saw fascinating on SportsCenter. They did a mashup of these two. Dan Campbell has this thing where he says, if you knock us down, not only are we going to get back up, but we're going to bite you on the way up in the knees. So we've got Nick Sirianni planting a flower for the Eagles, and we've got Dan Campbell biting the knees off people as they continue to get knocked down, which, if you're a Lions fan, you're 0-7, although you're playing the Eagles today. It's kind of bizarre because they've been down all season. So anyway, yeah, the coaches this week, my random thought is, hey, coaches, relax. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. Nick Sirianni has had enough problems without going to a press conference and bringing up this ridiculous analogy of a flower, comparing it to a football team. So yeah, interesting week for Nick Sirianni.
I did hear that, and I thought I was listening to something that I wasn't paying attention to, and that it wasn't a football press conference.
It was like a Frank Caliendo,
where yes, exactly,
imitating someone. It was amazing.
Exactly. All right, my next one is Mikey Williams. Remember that name? Like Michael Jordan and Nike, Mikey Williams has signed a shoe contract with Puma. Why is that a big deal? Because Mikey Williams is still in high school. He's 17 years old. He's a 6'2" phenom, is the word that was used in the story that I was read. He is the first American high school player to sign a sneaker deal. And of course, he can do all of this because of that new name, image, and likeness. You couldn't do that 2 years ago because you would have been ineligible to go to college at that point. He goes to school at the new Vertical Academy in Charlotte. Now, Marty, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that academy was started for one purpose and one purpose only. And my guess is, if you can play the sport of basketball and you're that good, you get into that school. And my guess is, if you walk into the admissions office and you're not at least 6'2" and you don't have a points per game in double digits, you're probably escorted right out of the admissions office. But you know what? Good for them. Good for Mikey Williams. They're playing the system, and it's going to work. He becomes eligible for the NBA in 2024. He's considered the 11th best prospect in his class by ESPN. And Marty, we talked about it when this name, image, and likeness thing first started, that it was only a matter of time before it trickled down to the high school level. And I'm going to guarantee you, within 5 years, there's going to be an elementary school kid who's got a shoe contract with somebody, because there's a company that's brave enough to do it, and there's a parent who's going to take advantage of the system. And why not? You're willing to give my kid free sneakers for the rest of his elementary school years that they're playing travel sports. Why wouldn't I take advantage of that?
I agree. And it's free publicity for the school. Because everybody follows and says, oh my gosh, they're giving this kid. It's like when David Sills, when USC and Lane Kiffin offered him when he was in 8th grade. It was great for David, but it was all about USC and Lane Kiffin and all the free press they got. And this thing, they had said that, hey, this is not going to trickle down to high school. Well, the high school kids said, you know what? Who's going to stop us now? Because
nobody can.
Exactly. I go to college. Somebody can pay me. They're saying the gray line now. It's getting blurred, but paying kids to come to the school. Well, guess what? If you're a top flight quarterback and a car dealer comes to you in May and says, hey, by the way, I know you're still thinking, but if you haven't signed yet, come to our school and I'll set you up with a contract for a Maserati. God, who knows?
With
Spencer
the choice system in Delaware.
That's
how
right.
far are we away from that?
I agree.
If the school's not involved, the school wouldn't be involved. The school can't be involved. There's a DIAA rule. The school cannot recruit. but there's nothing to keep a car dealership from saying, hey, you know what? Instead of going to school X out of the district, if you stay here, we'll give you a new car.
That's where else I was going to, is that you're going to see transfers because of that reason. They're already saying now kids looking to get out of Delaware because of the competition, whatever. But yeah, that's a concern, a genuine concern. All right, I'm going to go a little, well, I guess I don't know if it's later or not, but there was a story, and I don't know if you saw this, in California this week on Friday night. Inglewood High School beat Morningwood High School 106-0. These are conference teams playing each other. The quarterback for Inglewood High School is Justin Martin. Now, why is that name important? Because he's one of the top quarterbacks, the top 3 quarterbacks in this class. He's already signed with UCLA and Chip Kelly. Here's what makes this interesting. It was 52-0 at the end of the first quarter, at which point the Morningside coach, whose team is nothing but sophomores and freshmen, as he described it, asked the referees to start the running clock. The referees said they can't do it unless there's a mutual acceptance from the other coach. The Inglewood coach refused. So then it's 86-0 at halftime. Justin Martin never came out of this game, the quarterback for the recruit for UCLA. He ended up setting a national record with 13 touchdown passes, the last of which came in the final minutes of the game, after which he followed it up with a 2-point conversion to make the final score 106-0. So the sportsmanship here, and the coach of Inglewood was fired from a job 3 years ago because his team had to forfeit every game because he used 9 ineligible players during the season. So this guy's a real class act.
What's his name again? Let's make sure we get his name out there again. I know you said
let's see. The name of the coach. Well, the name of the quarterback is Justin Martin.
Yeah.
The name of the coach, and I'll have to look that up. They've asked for a comment from the coach. I haven't seen that it's been answered yet. Let's see. The Morningside coach is Coach Collins, and he's the one who said, after the game,
he's the one that wanted to get. He's the one that wanted
to stop. Yes.
Yeah.
The Inglewood coach is a 3rd-year Inglewood coach. His name is Milvon James. USA Today, a number of media outlets have tried to get a hold of him. This team that he has at Inglewood features 7 kids who are all going to Division I universities next fall. Coincidentally, all 7 of those are new transfers into Inglewood. So,
and you know what? That's all fine. That's all perfectly legal. As long as they transferred, that's perfectly fine.
Now, there's questions because he's had a history of the ineligible players. Right, before.
Yeah. Will they still be eligible next year at this time?
Yeah, that's right. Coach Collins for Morningside said they threw throughout the game. They never stopped. And apparently at one point, I guess one of the assistant coaches had said to one of the referees, hey, it's not our job to stop us. They're on the same field. They can keep up too. Clearly, they couldn't. 8-0 was the record of Inglewood coming into this. They had outscored teams by an average, I believe it was about like 55-7. Morningside was 2-8. They had lost a ton of players from last year, and it was just not a good situation, and sportsmanship was out the window. And part of the reason I brought this up, and this is funny, is kind of tie in here, but a week from tomorrow will be the 41st anniversary of a similar game that that has Delaware ties to it. And I don't know how many people remember this. On November 8th, 1980, again, this will be the 41st anniversary, Delaware State went out to Portland State to face the nationally ranked Vikings, and their quarterback, Neil Lomax. People hear that name, Eagles fans, a longtime St. Louis Cardinal quarterback. Neil Lomax set an NCAA record with 7 touchdown passes in the first quarter. It was 63-0 at halftime. The final score was 105-0 for Portland State over Delaware State. It remains the biggest blowout in Division I history. It has not been topped, obviously, thank goodness. But one of the crazy things about this, and that's what made me think about this, was going back and looking at some of the people on the team and some of the quotes. The university president for Delaware State University had an amazing reaction to this, and said, I don't know how anyone can think this is not humiliating. This has got to be one of the most humiliating things in my life. You don't often hear a university president say things like that. The coach of Portland State was Mouse Davis. Now, people may know that name. He was a longtime NFL guy. He invented the run and shoot offense. He ran it with Jim Kelly and the Houston Gamblers in the USFL, and then with the Houston Cougars with Andre Ware when he won the Heisman Trophy. His comment after the game was, "Don't blame me if that's a bleep team. They weren't prepared. They didn't come out to play, and we did. And here you go. Here's the tie-in. It's not our job to stop ourselves. They were out on the same field as us. They recruit kids the same as us. Let the chips fall where they may. So 105-0. We're coming up on the 41st anniversary. But I didn't think we'd see games like this anymore. Every now and then, this Inglewood Morningside type game pops up. And I'm glad that we don't see it more. But for Milvon James out there, boy, if the California, the DIAA, the version of that in California released a statement that was pretty damning about this was not anywhere in the realm of sportsmanship, and they couldn't imagine any scenario under which this was okay. So to their credit, they're thinking about taking action. But again, one of those things, use sportsmanship. I mean, we've seen games in Delaware where we think people are running up the score sometimes. No one ever does anything to this egregious level. So, yeah, a little history lesson there. But DSU, 105-0 to Portland State in 1980. And it really changed the course of the program. They brought in Bill Collick not long after that, who really resurrected that program, but a cool piece of Delaware State history.
Well, not surprising that two coaches that would be willing to do that think along the same lines in their quotes. And
exactly,
I was going to use the word idiot coaches. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but here's how they fix that problem: is you fire that guy. And
that's exactly it.
If the school's not willing to do it, somebody, whether it's the conference or their version of DIAA, should take care of that, because that is just completely unacceptable. And I don't want to place any blame on the quarterback. He's doing what his coaches tells him.
Yeah,
but I wonder what type of kid doesn't question the coach why they're still running that score up. And so again, I'm not going to belittle the player because I don't know that side of the story, but it would be something interesting to hear what he thought about having to keep going into the game of a blowout like that and basically being told to keep trying to score touchdowns. All right, I do have a feel-good story to give you my last random thought, and that's down from Seaford Middle School. I saw this on Twitter. There is an athlete, her name is Itzana Orozco Chavez, and she's a runner down there, and she finished last in the race that they were talking about. And when I saw her when I first saw the video that was going around social media, she actually had somebody helping her across the finish line, or that's what it looked like. It turns out that Itzana is blind. And the person that was helping her across the finish line had been helping her throughout the entire race. And I think 3 miles is what they run in high school. I'm not sure what it is in middle school. It really doesn't matter. The fact that she can't see and she's running, it could be 100 yards. And I would think that was amazing. The fact that she's doing this in a cross-country course, meaning it's not pavement.
No.
So you don't see where your feet are going. Marty, I trip on the cement when I'm running. I can't imagine running a cross-country race and not being able to see. And yet this girl had the biggest smile on her face. Hats off to the athletes on both teams. They stood around and waited for her to cross the finish line. And my guess is, I don't know for sure, it wasn't 30 seconds that they were waiting. It was probably several minutes. Could have been more than 10 minutes, but they waited for this girl to cross the finish line. She couldn't see them cheering her on, but they could hear them. And so hats off to the Seaford Middle School, and hats off to Itzana. I love it. How great is that story?
And it's cool. I've seen this. There's actually just a thin little rope that the two hold together. And, God bless the volunteers who do this too, because they have to run the race as well. But all they are there to do is guide the runner so that they're not tripping or running into things. Yeah, this is so cool. I had seen that as well. And I just thought, God, we're doing so much in sports where there's so much bad news and stuff. But then you get like with the Special Olympics, the unified teams, there's so much inclusion now where we're getting kids involved. And I got to be honest, if someone had said there was a blind cross-country runner, I'd have thought, okay, I'm not sure how that works, but it's amazing. It is amazing to see. And again, it's just a thin piece of rope that the guide uses to keep them on the path, but the runner is doing all the work. So yeah, hats off. I thought that was a phenomenal story as well.
You got any more random thoughts, or is that good for the week?
You know what? Oh, I did have one more. I hit our weekly Lyle Hempel update. Hempel last week, as you remember, the St. Elizabeth, son of the St. Elizabeth legendary coach, Joe Hempel. Lyle's the defensive coordinator, Wake Forest. They are still undefeated. Now, last week, they gave up 56 points to Army and about 500 rushing yards. So Lyle Hempel's defensive coordinator seat couldn't have been too comfortable this week. Yesterday, they came out against a decent Duke offensive team. Duke is not good this season, but they've got a good offense. And they shut them out for about 57 minutes. Duke finally got a touchdown at the end of the game, but Wake won the game 45-7. So a great comeback for Lyle Hempel and his defense. And the Demon Deacons are now 9-0 for the first time ever. They are one of only, I believe, 6 unbeaten teams left at the FBS level, So hats off to Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons. And again, I've kind of adopted this team because of Lyle Hempel. I got a couple notes on Twitter about people saying, "Oh, I didn't know, he was at Temple." So pretty cool. And again, 9-0 for the first time ever. So things are looking up for the Demon Deeks.
All right, that's our random thoughts for the week. If you've got anything you think we should be talking about randomly, it doesn't matter what the topic is, as long as it's around sports, can be any level, any sport. Let us know on our Twitter or Facebook pages at DE Sports Debate. That's DE Sports Debate. And don't forget, this will be one of the best of segments each week that you can tune into on YouTube. So if you know somebody who they would be interested in a certain thought that we had this week, don't want to listen to the entire podcast to find it, just go to YouTube and you can hear it and see our faces as well.